Now let us take examples of some polyatomic molecular species and try to find out what are their structures are, how we can draw them, how we can find out what exactly the bonds are formed in these multi or polyatomic molecular species by Lewis representations. Remember, whenever we are dealing with the polyatomic molecular species, usually the atoms which are least electronegative are the ones which actually occupies always the central positions. This rule is actually not always valid. Like in case of water, we find oxygen is present as a central molecule. So whenever we have hydrogen and the more electronegative, it is the electronegative one which goes into the center. But other than in the usual ones, the least electronegative becomes the central atom, and then other more electronegative and the hydrogen-like species gets arranged around it. Now you must have a prior idea of the molecule's structure, otherwise you will be able to learn about the exact shapes of these molecules later on when we'll be dealing with the hybridization and valence electron share repulsion theories and other theories. But fine, but it's a simple, very what we can say crude way of representing the types of the bonds and how these atoms are joined to each other in the polyatomic molecular species. Let us take the examples like NF3, nitrogen trifluoride. In case of NF3, what we find is each nitrogen is having 5 valence electrons. So 2 we can make out from here only. 3 are out of the 5 are forming bond with the 3 fluorine atoms. So 2 are present as a lone pair in the form of a lone pair that's not participating in the bond formation. So out of the 5 valence electrons of nitrogen, 3 are forming bond with the 3 fluorine atoms and 1 pair is present as such. So it is almost in the form of like this. So it's like this. Fluorine, each fluorine we already know is having 7 electrons. So it is only in short of 1 electron, so it only needs 1. So this is how the fluorine is also able to complete its octet. So it's this like this, and each fluorine by this method like this is able to have 8 electrons in its valence shell, and nitrogen by sharing its 3 electrons with the 3 fluorine atom is having 8 electrons in its valence shell. So we can represent this molecule as N with F, F and F with this one lone pair. Let us take some other molecules. In this also you can see nitrogen is the least electronegative one, so it is present as a central atom. All other more electronegative atoms or hydrogen-like species gets arranged around it. Let us take some other example. Like we can take carbonate. Now in carbonate, remember, or in the polyatomic molecular species, the negative charge means the species has accepted electrons, so we will increase the number of the electrons. We know definitely the extra electrons will go into the more electronegative atoms because they are the ones which actually are having high electronegativities. So and the oxygen is the one out of these which is more electronegative. So 2 extra electrons which this carbonate molecular species is having, they are being shared. They are actually one of these is present in one oxygen atom, the other one is present on the other oxygen atom. So how they are arranged is, see, carbon is the least electronegative and out of these 4 atoms which we have, 3 are oxygen, so 1 is carbon, which is the least electronegative one. We know carbon is having 4 valence electrons, so definitely it will be forming 4 bonds. Now what the oxygen needs is, oxygen needs 2 electrons. So one oxygen shares its 2 electrons with 1 carbon. So this is how it is actually forming a double bond with the one carbon atom, and actually is in the form of what, like this. It is almost like this. Is forming or completing 8 electrons. Whereas now, since one out of the 2 electrons of the carbon are already engaged with the one oxygen atom, the carbon is left with only 2 electrons. Now these 2 electrons out of these, one is being shared with each of the other oxygen atoms, which are already having what? I'm writing down here 6 electrons. Remember, oxygen is having 6 valence electrons. One is shared with this carbon, so it is left with 5. But each oxygen is accepting one extra electron also. Like this, that is why it has a negative charge. It has a negative charge. So this also has this, in this way, 3 lone pairs. This also has 3 lone pairs. This has only 2 lone pairs. So this is what the exact, what we have, the Lewis representation of the carbonate molecule, and the carbon, this is how, is also acquiring 8 electrons. 4 here, 2 here, 2 here, and this is how it becomes 8. Whereas oxygens, 8 here and 8 here in this, with this oxygen. How 8? I'm repeating again. 6 is, it was having originally 1 shared with carbons, it was left with 5, but it acquired 1 from the outside. That's how we had, it is having 2 negative charge. So this is how each oxygen which are present are drawn on the left hand side are also having 8 electron. So this molecule can be simply represented like this, and these are the 2 pairs which this double bonded oxygen is having. These are the 3 lone pairs which these single bonded oxygen are having with the negative charges. So this is what is the representation of the carbonate molecule. Now let us understand some examples in which we find that there is third type of bonding involved, which is also called dative bonding or coordinate covalent bonding.